He and Helen took time to travel together, and on a trip to Central America, they decided to do something with their money to counteract what they saw as the long reach of communism. The Waltons set up the Latin American Scholarship Fund to send 180 students a year to one of 3 Christian universities in Arkansas.
We think they need to learn about the government of the United States where everybody gets to vote. People aren't afraid to vote.
You've had chairs since January.
Hello, I see you on TV, but never seen you in person.
One bright spot during Sam's illness was that he finally met the goal that seemed so unlikely when he set it for himself years before. Walmart soared past Kmart and Sears, and in 1991, while Sam was struggling for his life, became the nation's largest retailer. In 1992, President Bush flew to Walmart's home offices in Bentonville to confer presidential recognition on Sam Walton for his achievements, the Medal of Freedom.
I salute you, sir, for your vision, and I am proud to give you your nation's highest civilian honor.
Sam was determined he was going to get there somehow. Of course, we had to take him in a wheelchair, and his clothes, to get something that looked halfway decent on him was terrible because he'd lost so much weight. At that point, any disease, any germ that got to him would just be the end. He just barely got up there. I helped him a little bit, but he was determined. But I think Sam realized, even at that time, that the end was not far.
A few days later, Sam checked into the University of Arkansas Hospital in Little Rock. On April 5th, 1992, he died, 6 days after his 74th birthday.
He never left Bentonville. He proved that old-fashioned values and devotion to your roots were not inconsistent with extraordinary success by international standards.
The fortune Sam amassed, second only to the Sultan of Brunei at the time of his death, was dispersed evenly among his 4 children and his wife, Helen. Although the Walton family has endowed a grant-making foundation, it remains to be seen if their philanthropy will become commensurate with their enormous wealth. The Waltons like to support smaller organizations close to home, such as education and healthcare charities in the poverty-steeped Mississippi Delta. The Walton family believes that Walmart itself and its prominent example of good old American enterprise is the best way it can help Americans. Sam Walton's unparalleled success in the retail industry defied the wisdom of the experts. He was too late, they said. His ideas were not original enough. But whether by luck or by design, Sam Walton, more than perhaps anyone, came to embody the American dream. He worked hard, he believed in himself, he ruthlessly undercut his competitors, and he was in the right place at the right time.
Probably the stupidest question that people asked me about him was he a genius or was he lucky? Well, you know, the answer, of course, is both, because nobody lucks into building the biggest retailer in the world and amassing a fortune of $25 billion. While he may not have set out to be the richest man in America, I think it pleased him very much.
So hallelujah, glory be. I hope you're as happy to be here this morning as I am. Thank you very much. Let's go to work, double time. Yeah!
My father was the oldest boy in the family of 8. And he grew up on a farm in Utah, but his father was primarily a sheep herder and had a lot of sheep that he ran on the winter range.
In 1921, an economic depression hit Utah. Agriculture collapsed and Marriott returned home to a penniless father. All of the farm's profits were needed to pay off bank loans. Having witnessed enough poverty and with the hope of building a better future, J.W. Marriott vowed to return to school and leave farm life forever.
He had never graduated from high school because he was spending too much time herding sheep, but he talked his way into Weber State College.
Aaron Tracy, Marriott's former 7th grade teacher, was now president of a new community college called Weber State.
President Tracy hired Jay Willard and 2 other returned missionaries that first year that he was back, 1921 and 22, to teach theology. And he paid them by paying their tuition.
Dad did extremely well at school. He, in his senior year, which was the second year, it was just a 2-year school, he was, I guess, manager of the bookstore. He wrote for the school newspaper. He was an English teacher. He also was the stock boy in the bookstore, and he was also the senior class president.
In June, before his 23rd birthday, Marriott was one of the first 50 to graduate from Weber. That summer, he took on a new job to earn money for tuition at the University of Utah, selling woolens to lumberjacks in the Pacific Northwest.
He'd find the 2 meanest-looking lumberjacks he could find, and he'd say, "Okay, guys, let's make you a deal here." I'll say, "I will give you a pair of this underwear if you can tear it apart. Now I'll put one of you on one leg and one of you on the other, and you have a tug-of-war, and if you can rip this thing apart, it's yours. If you can't, you got to buy it from me." And they'd always take him up on the bet, and they would always lose.
When J. Willard Marriott made $3,000 selling woolen underwear, that was just an extraordinary amount of money for an individual to make, particularly a young man.
But his college career was interrupted a few terms short of graduation when Marriott's father unwisely borrowed money to buy more sheep. 3,000 sheep were to be herded from Nevada to Utah, and without complaint, J.W. dutifully left school for 6 months and worked for his father.
Not only did 500 of the sheep die, but the remaining number of the sheep were sold, and much of the money was taken to satisfy a loan at the bank. And so he had virtually nothing to show for this 6 months of work.
They had a very successful A&W root beer stand in Salt Lake. And he saw that and saw that it did well. And he went to the owner of the brand and asked for a franchise for A&W root beer for Washington, Baltimore, Richmond, and Philadelphia.
Planning for a future with his bride-to-be, Marriott, with $1,500 earned from woolen underwear sales, along with a $1,500 loan, put up half the cost of the East Coast A&W root beer franchise. Hugh Colton, a friend since missionary days, invested the rest. On May 20th, 1927, Marriott and Colton opened their 9-stool stand on 14th Street. At 10:02, they sold their first nickel mug of root beer.
Well, they were lined up 100, 200 deep down the sidewalk. It was a curiosity more than anything else, and hot summer day in Washington, cold root beer was really something.
When they arrived in Washington, D.C., they moved into my parents' one-bedroom apartment. It was so small, I don't know how 4 people could even fit in there.
From the start, the A&W stand did a booming business. Allie appointed herself bookkeeper, collecting the syrup-soaked profits from the sale of each crystal mug of root beer.
She would take those sticky nickels from the sale of root beer was a nickel a glass, and put them in a brown bag and walk over to the bank at 1 o'clock in the morning.
I think right from the start of their marriage that it was just a wonderful relationship. Mr. Marriott and his wife truly complemented each other. They made a great team, a great partnership.
Before long, Marriott and Colton opened a second location on 9th Street. But as the season changed from summer to fall, root beer sales fell flat.
It started getting cold in October, and nobody was buying root beer, and that was the only thing they sold. And so my dad called back to Leroy Allen in California and said, "Hey, we can't subsist on root beer here." And Leroy Allen says, "Well, all these guys close these A&W root beer stands. Nobody in their right mind is going to try and sell root beer in the winter. Just close up, go to Florida for the winter, take a vacation, come back in the spring and open up again."
Marriott wouldn't take no for an answer. He traveled by train to Sacramento to see Mr. Allen of A&W and convinced him that J. Willard Marriott would be the first A&W franchisee to serve food.